Yamunatira vanachari Yamunatira vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Gunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashotara Satashishimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashotara Satashishimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem se Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Ghoda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Go Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bo All glorious the assembled devotees All glorious the assembled devotees All glorious the assembled devotees Hare Krishna All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Shrimate Bhakti Vikasa Swami. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 1, text number 43. Nunam Nripanam Tri Mada Utpathanam Mahim Muhu Chalayatam Chamubihi Vadhat Prapana Arti Jihrishaya Ishaha Api Upaikshata Agham Bhagavan Kurunam Nunam Nripanam Trimadotpatanam Nunam Nripanam Trimadotpatanam Mahimushchalayatam Chamumbihi Mahimushchalayatam Chamumbihi Vadhat Prapanarti Jirisha Yesho Vadhat Prapanarti Jirisha Yesho Pyupaikshatagham Bhagavan Kurunam Pyupaikshatagham Bhagavan Kurunam Nunam Nripanam Trimadotpatanam Mahimushchalayatam Chamubihi Vadhat Prapanarti Jirisha Yesho Pyupaigatagham Bhagavan Kurunam Nunam Nripanam Trimadotpatanam Mahimushchalayatam Chamubihi Vadhat Prapanarti Jirisha Yesho Pyupaikshatagham Bhagavan Kurunam. Please chant.
Nunam Nripanam Trimadotpatanam Nunam Nripanam Trimadotpatanam Mahim Muhushchalayatam Chamubihi
Muhushchalayatam Chamubihi
Vadat Prapanarti Jihirsha Yesho
Vadat Prapanarti Jirisha Yesho
Vyupaikshatagham Bhagavan Kurunam
Pyupaikshatagham Bhagavan Kurunam
Nunam Nripanam Trimadotpatanam
Nam Nipanam Trimadotpatanam
Mahim Muhushchalayatam Chamubihi
Chalayatam
Vadat Prapanarti Jihirsha Yesho
Vadat Prapanarti Jirisha Yesho Ikshatagham Bhagavan Kurunam
Nunam Nirpanam Trimadotpatanam
Nam Nirpanam Trimadotpatanam
Mahimuhushchalayatam Chamubihi
Mahimushchalayatam Chamubihi
Vadat Prapanarti Jahisha Yesho
Vadhat Prapanarti Jirisha Yesho
Pyupaikshatagham Bhagavan Kurunam
Pyupaikshatagham Bhagavan Kurunam Nunam Nripanam Trimadotpatanam Chalayatam Chamubihi Nunam nripanam trimadotpatanam mahim muhuschalayatam chamubhi Yat prapanarti jihisha yesho Yupaikshatagham bhagavan kurunam. Matajis. Nam nirpanam trimadotpatanam Puschalayatam chamubhi Jihisha yesho Yupaikshatagham bhagavan kurunam. Nunam nirpanam trimadotpatanam Chalayatam chamubhi Bhakti jihisha yesho Shatagham bhagavan kurunam Nunam nirpanam trimadotpatanam Mahimuhuschalayatam chamubhi Bhakti jihisha yesho Shatagham bhagavan kurunam Nunam, of course, Nripanam, of the kings. Three, Mada, Utpathanam, going astray out of false pride. Mahim, earth. Muhu, constantly. Chalayatam, agitating. Chamubihi, by the movement of soldiers. Vadhat, from the act of killing. Prapana, surrendered. Arti, jihishaya, willing to receive the distress of the sufferers. Ishaha, of the Lord. Api, in spite of. Upaikshata, weighted. Agham, offenses. Bhagavan, the Supreme Lord. Gurunam, of the Kurus. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. Despite His being the Lord and always being willing to relieve the distress of the sufferers, He, Krishna, refrained from killing the Kurus although they committed all sorts of sins, and although He saw other kings constantly agitating the earth by their strong military movements, carried out under the dictation of the three kinds of false pride. Purport. As declared in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord appears in the mortal world to execute His much-needed mission of killing the miscreants and giving protection to the suffering faithful. In spite of that mission, Lord Krishna tolerated the insult to Draupadi by the Kurus and the injustices perpetuated against the Pandavas, as well as insults to Himself. The question may be raised, why did He tolerate such injustices and insults in His presence? Why did He not chastise the Kurus immediately? When Draupadi was insulted in the assembly of the Kurus by their attempt to see her naked in the presence of all, the Lord protected Draupadi by supplying an unlimited length of clothing. But He did not chastise the insulting party immediately. The silence of the Lord did not mean, however, that He excused the offenses of the Kurus. There were many other kings on the earth who had become very proud of the three kinds of possessions: wealth, education, and followers, and they were constantly agitating the earth by movements of military strength. The Lord was just waiting to get them together on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and kill them all at one time, just to make a shortcut in his killing mission. Godless kings or heads of state, when puffed up by advancement of material wealth, education, and increase of population, always make a show of military strength and give trouble to the innocent. When Lord Krishna was personally present, there were many such kings all over the world, and thus he arranged for the battlefield of Kurukshetra. In his manifestation of Vishvarupa, the Lord expressed his mission of killing as follows: I have willingly descended on the earth in my capacity of intolerable time in order to decrease the unwanted population. I shall finish all those who have assembled here except you, the Pandavas. This killing does not wait for you to take part in it. It is already arranged. All will be killed by me. If you want to become famous as a hero of the battlefield and thus enjoy the booty of war, then, O Savyasachi, just become the immediate cause of this killing and just take the credit. I have already killed all the great warriors, Bhishma, Drona, Jayadratha, Karna, and many other great generals. Do not worry. Fight the battle and become famous as a great hero. Bhagavad Gita 11:32-34. The Lord always wants to see his devotee as the hero of some episode which he himself performs. He wanted to see his devotees and friend Arjuna, his devotee and friend Arjuna, as the hero of the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and thus he waited for all the miscreants of the world to assemble. That, and nothing else, is the explanation of his waiting. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utaf Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sarvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanshakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vikasa Swaminiti Namine Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavari Pashtatyade Shatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nunam Nripanam Trimadot Patanam Mahimuhuscha Layatam Chamubihi Vadhat Prapanarti Jahisha Yesho Pupaikshatagam Bhagavan Kurunam. Despite his being the Lord and always being willing to relieve the distress of the sufferers, he, Krishna, refrained from killing the Kurus, although they committed all sorts of sins, and although he saw other kings constantly agitating the earth by their strong military movements, carried out under the direction of the three kinds of false pride. We are reading here from the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the first chapter, titled Questions by Vidura. We're almost at the end of the chapter here, where Vidura is inquiring from Rishi Maitreya about all the whereabouts and the well-beings of his different friends, his different well-wishers, and all the people that he knew in the camp of the Pandavas and the camp of the Kurus also, trying to see where they are, what they're doing, and what has happened, because he's feeling very aggrieved and very, very much sad by the feeling of separation from Krishna. And we'll see in this next chapter coming up, they'll be remembering the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna. It's actually a very relishable section of the Bhagavatam. All of these sections of the Srimad Bhagavatam, of course, are very relishable. But we can see that there's perfect, there's more perfect, and there's even most perfect. So even though all the sections are perfectly relishable, we can find increasingly more and more taste in different sections of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So here in this specific verse, Vidura is asking about the nature of Krishna's appearance in this earth, on this earth rather, and asking about why specifically he acts in the way that he did, specifically in relation to the Kurus, and how we know, and as Krishna speaks in the Bhagavad Gita, why he appears, but it seems like even though they were not only offensive to Krishna, but very offensive to Krishna's devotees, it seems like for a long time Krishna wasn't doing much for a long time. And that I'll explain later on in my class and kind of elaborate more on, as Prabhupada so exquisitely puts it in the purport. But first, the main point kind of touched upon in the translation here and in Prabhupada's purport is this idea of false pride. It's one of those 6 things that bind us here in the material world. It's like the lust, anger, greed, envy, pride, illusion. All these things, they constantly bind us here in the material world. And Prabhupada here is specifically talking about pride, and he references 3 things that not only the kings of the earth at the time of Krishna's appearance and at the time of Krishna speaking the Bhagavad Gita, qualities that they had, but we can even see that in current society, of course not maybe to the same extent that it was back in the day, like you hear and you read about descriptions of the palaces that people had in the Srimad Bhagavatam. You see the amount of education that these people had and how learned they were in the scriptures and in the Shastra, and how many followers that different people had. I mean, you just look at, for example, there's a picture on the front of this Bhagavad Gita, and on many of the Bhagavad Gita showing Krishna and Arjuna on the battlefield, and you see just how many people were present there, either fighting on behalf of the Pandavas or fighting on behalf of the Kauravas. So there was so many people assembled at this battlefield. So people had so much wealth, so much education, so many followers. And we can see that those facilities of pride are still prominent today in those who exhibit this sense of false prestige. So Prabhupada says here that there were many other kings on the earth who had become very proud of the 3 different kinds of possessions: wealth, education, and followers. And they were constantly agitating the earth by movements of military strength. The Lord was just waiting to get them together on the battlefield of Kurukshetra and kill them all at the same time, just to make a shortcut in his killing mission. So we can see that these people who have false pride and who might have some sense of proprietorship or some sense of possession in the material world, they think themselves the controller. They think themselves the proprietor, and they think themselves ultimately as God. We see in modern society, so many people are trying to be God. So many people are trying to be in control of their own situation. And we can see in this material world, all of us have been given a small ability and facility to try to enjoy, right? We can see that Krishna has the ability to create. He's created this whole material creation, for example. And that was even due to a small portion of his potency, what to speak of the entire manifestation of the spiritual world. And here we are able to think that we can create life by having children. We can have a house. We can have a car. We can have so many different facilities. You ask anyone on the street about any possession that they have, like, oh yeah, that's my phone. Oh yeah, that's my car. I'm going to go to my job. I'm about to pick up my children from work. So many people have small amount of qualities that the Supreme Lord has, and they're able to execute those qualities to a small capacity. One good analogy is that, Krishna, he's able to be in control of everything. Anybody who is living, anything that is non-living, not even a blade of grass moves in this material world without the will of the Supreme Lord. So he's in control of everything, versus we are kind of minute controllers just within this own material body. I cannot control, let's say, something that Tyrese was thinking. I can't manipulate and control his mind. I can't make his hand touch his head, or I can't make his hand touch his feet. I couldn't do anything like that because I'm only in control of this body. So we can see that the free will of the jiva in the material world is kind of like a cow or an animal within a fence. The cow or the animal has free will to roam within that specific jurisdiction that has been given. And the animal or the cow that's in that facility might think, oh, I have such a great facility, I have so much grass to eat, I have this nice barn to stay in, and what I have is basically as great as the whole world. But little does the animal know that its small field, maybe 1 acre of land, we're talking about getting cows often, so you talk about how you have to have 1 acre per cow. So this one cow might think, oh yeah, my acre of land is so big and my facilities are so great. But that 1 acre of land compared to the whole earth is very insignificant. And this one earth in comparison to the whole universe is also very insignificant. And this material world in comparison to the spiritual world is also very insignificant. So we can see that people are puffed up by this false pride, and they can think and they can be under this illusion that there's no need for God and that they can actually be the supreme controller. Krishna actually talks about this in the Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 16, titled The Divine and Demoniac Natures. You can pull up text 10 of the 16th chapter. Krishna says, taking shelter of insatiable lust and absorbed in the conceit of pride and false prestige, the demoniac thus illusioned are always sworn to unclean work, attracted by the impermanent. Prabhupada makes very important points in this purport about the nature of why we're here in this material world, so I'll read that. Purport. The demoniac mentality is described here. The demons have no satiation for their lust. They will go on increasing and increasing their insatiable desires for material enjoyment. Although they're always full of anxieties on account of accepting non-permanent things, still they continue to engage in activities out of illusion. They have no knowledge and cannot tell that they are heading in the wrong way. Accepting non-permanent things, such demoniac people create their own God, create their own hymns, and chant accordingly. The result is that they become more and more attracted to two things: sex enjoyment and accumulation of material wealth. So this is the nature of people that are puffed up in this material world, and the nature of all of us in the material world that are trying to enjoy separately from Krishna. We are accepting the non-permanent as permanent, and we're accepting things that are not knowledge as knowledge. Therefore, when people follow such demoniac people and follow the demoniac people in charge, we can see that it's like one blind man following another blind man into a well. Prabhupada often gives this analogy that in an abandoned field or an abandoned area, there might be a deep, dark well that's covered over by some grass, so you can't really see it. And especially one who has eyes can barely see it. What to speak of someone who's blind, who's following another man who is blind? There's no chance of them even there's like no question of them even trying to see it. So we can see that by following these blind leaders and these demoniac people in society who are puffed up with this false pride and false prestige, that by following them we actually ruin our whole life. Prabhupada often makes the point that this human form of life was acquired after such a long time, and we've finally been given the capabilities and the facilities to try and make spiritual advancement and to come closer to Krishna. Because in the animal species of life, this isn't possible. In the lower planets, this isn't possible. And it's kind of possible, but it's very, very low chance. And in the heavenly planets also, there's so much enjoyment that there's very little chance to make advancement in our spiritual life. So after such a long time, we've finally got this human birth. But yet we're taking the advice and we're following those who are taking things that are not knowledge as knowledge, taking the non-permanent to be permanent, and therefore we fall into this deep, dark well with them. And these people, Prabhupada says that they often create their own God, create their own hymns, and they chant these accordingly. And Mahotsa Prabhu often makes this point in his classes that generally everybody worships somebody, right? There's celebrities that people worship, there's famous actors, there's musicians, there's famous athletes and this kind of stuff. People even go to the extent of worshiping themselves. And in this regard, specifically what Prabhupada is talking here, I remember in my life before coming to Krishna consciousness, there was one musician that I used to listen to often, and he even created this song, and it was called "I Am a God," and it put featuring God on the end of the song, but it was only him on the song. So he was not only saying himself as God, he was creating his own hymns, but he was also chanting them accordingly, simply glorifying himself, right? So people go so far to the extent that not only do they not accept the supremacy and the jurisdiction of Krishna, but they even put themselves up on that pedestal and try to glorify themselves accordingly. And all we can see is that what this leads to in the material world is just more and more suffering, right? This idea of, I'll be in control of so many things, I'll have so much, as Prabhupada says here, so much wealth, so much education, so many followers. We can see that this doesn't actually bring one to real happiness. This doesn't actually bring one to quench the desires that one is having. But as Prabhupada often describes, is that in this material world, it's like we're in a desert, and we're constantly, because when one is in a desert, naturally it's very hot, one is sweating a lot, so one is naturally in a very thirsty situation. So in order to quench one's thirst, naturally one wants to get a whole lot of water to drink. But these things in the material world, it's just simply like another drop of water where it just only makes one more and more thirsty. So we can see that this is what's going on in society, that people are after wealth, education, followers, and they're being puffed up in this sort of way, like, oh, I'm so wealthy, I'm so educated, and I have so many followers. But as I said before, it's actually very small in comparison to the wealth, the amount of followers, and the education that's exhibited by Lord Sri Krishna. So this aspect of pride is further described in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. You can pull up that verse. It's 15:5. Prabhupada makes a very amazing point here. The translation is, "Those who are free from false prestige, illusion, and false association, who understand eternal, and who are done with material lust, who are free from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who, unbewildered, know how to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, attain that eternal kingdom." Purport. The surrendering process is described here very nicely. The first qualification is that one should not be deluded by pride. Because the conditioned soul is puffed up, thinking himself the Lord of material nature, it is very difficult for him to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One should know by the cultivation of real knowledge that he is not the Lord of material nature. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Lord. One who is free from delusion caused by pride, he can begin the process of surrender. For one who is always expecting some honor in this material world, it is not possible to surrender to the Supreme Person. Pride is due to illusion, for although one comes here, stays for a brief time, and then goes away, he has the foolish notion that he is the Lord of this world. Thus he makes all things complicated and is always in trouble. The whole world moves under this impression. People are considering the land, this earth, to belong to human society, and they have divided the land under the false impression that they are the proprietors. One has to get out of this false notion that human society is the proprietor of this world. When one is free from such a false notion, he becomes free from the association caused by familial, social, and national affections. These faulty associations bind one in the material world. After this stage, one has to develop spiritual knowledge. One has to cultivate knowledge of what is actually his own and what is actually not his own. And when one has an understanding of things as they are, he becomes free from all dual conceptions such as happiness and distress, pleasures and pain. He becomes full in knowledge. Then it is possible for him to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is an amazing point that Srila Prabhupada makes about pride overall. And that overall, it's this pride that's a big binding factor for us in the material world. And in the Bhagavad Gita, it's So the cure for pride Prabhupada gives here is twofold. It's knowledge and it's surrender. So knowledge in the Bhagavad Gita, it's described as knowing what is matter, what is spirit, and who is the controller of both. So these people who are in the material world, they're thinking that this world, like I was saying, it's permanent, and they're thinking that these different things, like Prabhupada was saying here, that the land, the earth, and all these things, they belong to human society, and thus they have divided them as such. And when one actually comes to the platform of knowledge, knowing what is matter, what is spirit, and knowing who is the controller of both, they'll practically see that nothing is really under their control or under their jurisdiction. Everything is going under control, under the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's a big thing right now that people are trying to, and I mean it's been going on forever, practically, like we hear about the fountain of youth and other things like this, that people have been trying to avoid death for the longest time, right? And Krishna even says in the Bhagavad Gita that for those who are unwilling to see him, he comes at the end as the form of death. And so people have been trying to act as the supreme controller, act as God for so long, and they've been trying to become free from death, but we can see that this is an impossible task. People have been trying for so long, and my spiritual master, His Holiness Bhakti Vikash Maharaj, often makes this point that the scientists, they'll say, in maybe 50 to 100 years, then we'll finally find the answer. Our technology isn't necessarily the best. We have to make more discoveries. We have to do more experiments. And they advance in technology. They do more experiments. And they do so many things in the name of knowledge and in the name of actually trying to help individuals. But really, all they do is just waste time. They waste their valuable human form of life. And in the name of cultivating knowledge, they're just wasting time. Therefore, in this purport, Srila Prabhupada says, one has to cultivate knowledge of what is actually his own and what is actually not his own. That's why in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, at the end of this canto, we have Kapila Dev's teachings, and he says that one has to approach spiritual life with both Gyan and Vairagya. And these two things, they have to go together. Gyan, knowledge, and Vairagya, renunciation. When one just has knowledge of what is there and what isn't there, but they don't have the idea of renunciation, they'll still remain attached to the items of this material world. They won't actually free themselves from the different allurements and attachments of the material world. There's the knowledge, but there's no action. Similarly, Vairagya, detachment, without the knowledge of what is what, one will tend to actually do what is called false renunciation. And this is actually just another form of pride. I was just listening to a class by Srila Prabhupada the other day, and Prabhupada was talking about this concept of renunciation and was saying that in the name of renunciation, people think, I have so many things that belong to me, and I'm going to give this up, I'm going to give that up, and I'm going to end up with having nothing. But Prabhupada was making the point that real renunciation means that one doesn't think, I have so many things and I'm going to renounce them all. But really, he understands that everything actually belongs to Krishna. And that the real meaning of this renunciation is to renounce your attachment to them. And not think that, I'm just not going to have anything at all. I'm just going to go to the forest. I'm just going to sit there and I'm going to do my meditation. This is false renunciation. Real renunciation is using everything that is Krishna's, which is everything, in the service of Krishna. That is real renunciation. And with this real renunciation, we can actually begin to approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is a concept that is being broached a lot in this different section, is the idea of because there's false pride, like we hear all these terms like false pride, false ego, false renunciation. And this is because, there's things like the ego, and we see that the Buddhists and the impersonalists, they're trying to become free from the ego altogether, right? They're trying to become free from all things that they see as attachments. But really what we're attached to is the false ego, the false conception that I am this body, these are my relatives, these are my friends, this is my hometown, this is my nation. And they have this false egoism, this false concept of self. But the real concept of self exists. There's the real self. There's the identity that you're Jiva Swarupoi Krishna Nitya Das. that we're all spirit souls, eternal servants of Krishna. So the false ego that we're currently under is there, and the real ego is also there. Similarly, with this idea of pride, there's false pride, but then there's also transcendental pride. There's the pride of the devotees of the Lord who are very proud of the fact that they've attained the mercy and the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is described in the Nectar of Devotion, the 29th chapter. There's different sections in this area describing different qualities that devotees of the Lord have. And one of them is this idea of this transcendental pride. And Prabhupada describes there that it isn't just that one is like puffed up thinking, oh, I'm so much better than everybody else. But after one gets to this platform of humility and completely surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they aren't thinking, oh, I'm such an amazing guy, I'm so great, I've done so many great things to attain the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But they have the idea and the great fortune of being accepted under the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and under the shelter of the spiritual master. I can at least speak for myself, but when I go out into the world and when I at least try to make an attempt to preach, I'm very proud of the fact that I can be considered a member of this Krishna Life institution, that I can be considered as a member of the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, and that I've been accepted under the shelter of my spiritual master, right? That's things that are good to be proud of the fact that you have a pure devotee as your spiritual master. That's not something that's just available to anybody and everybody, right? So there's this concept of this false pride that we have to be free from, and then there's the real transcendental pride. And this is the nature of things in the material world, that this material world, it's described in the same 15th chapter as it's a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. It's like if you're by the side of a river or by a lake or generally any body of water, you'll see the reflection reflected in the water, but it's not the same quality as what you can practically see outside of the water. Although the same things are there. If you see a tree around you, if you see a bird, if you see some grasses or some flowers, all of those things will be reflected in the water. It isn't like any of those things will be missing, but they'll just be of a different quality. So we can see that these two types of pride, one is exhibited by the demons and one is exhibited by the devotees. And this goes along with what Krishna is describing as his mission here in the material world. Prabhupada describes here in the beginning of the purport that as declared in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord appears in the mortal world to execute his much-needed mission of killing the miscreants and giving protection to the faithful. So that's described in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, texts 7 through 9. You can pull that up. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutanama dharmasya tadatmanam shrijam yaham. That Krishna says, whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and a prominent rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. Next verse is Parityanaya sadhunam vinashayam chaduskritam dharma samstapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge. That to deliver the pious and annihilate the miscreants, as well as to reestablish the principles of religion, I myself appear millennium after millennium. Then finally, there's Janma Karma Chime Divyam Evam Yoveti Tatvataha Tyaktva Deham Punarjanma Naitimam Eti Sorjuna. That one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving this body, take birth again in the material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So we can see the comparison, at least, between what Krishna describes as the miscreants of this material world and the suffering faithful, his devotees. That one who is a demon, one who is attached to, like I was saying, lust, anger, envy, pride, illusion, one who is attached to all of these things, Krishna also comes. And we can see in this specific pastime that we're talking about, and devotees who have been giving the nice classes have been mentioning this point, that in the time and in the appearance of Krishna, everybody who was around him practically saw him, right? We can see that Arjuna saw him, the Pandavas saw him, Kunti Maharani saw him, and all these people, they accepted him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead because they actually had the vision, they actually understood who Krishna was. But then we see that people like Duryodhana, people like his followers, people like Shishupal, people like Dantavakra, they thought Krishna just as an ordinary person. And they thought, yeah, Krishna's some king, he was a cowherd boy. But then he went to Mathura and became some prince in Dwarka. And I'm also a king, I'm also a prince, so we're equal and on the same level. And this is not the mentality of one who is in knowledge. And as Krishna says, this isn't the mentality of one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities. And Krishna gives the benediction that upon leaving his body, these people do not take birth again in the material world, but actually attains the eternal spiritual world. And this is what is given to these people who are actually in knowledge and who have surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is the important point, that to become free from this false pride, one has to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or his bona fide representative. And because, in this process of surrender and in this idea of surrender, as we often hear described all throughout Srila Prabhupada's books, is that one has to serve the spiritual master as a menial servant. And to be surrendered to someone, to accept instruction from someone else, and to basically be under someone else's complete control, it's very hard to have false pride in this situation. It's hard for one to be basically treated as a menial servant and be very puffed up about their position. So we can practically see that this is what has to be done to be free from this idea of false pride. And so anyway, this mission of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that's being described, the question that Vidura is asking is, why is it that even though Krishna is saying this in Bhagavad Gita, that he comes to free and help his devotees who are sometimes in a suffering condition of life and annihilate the demons, why is it that he tolerated for so long this blasphemous activities of the Kuru dynasty, not only to himself but to his devotees? We hear so often about how Krishna cares about his devotees even more than himself. But Vidura is making the point here that how is it that after so much intolerable dealings and intolerable activities, Krishna waited so long to end the lives and end the reign of the demons in this world who have been puffed up by this false pride and false prestige? How is it that you say in the Bhagavad Gita that you come here to kill them and to destroy them, but yet you waited so long? Because we can see that Krishna actually didn't have to wait for the battlefield of Kurukshetra to happen. And Prabhupada makes this point here that Krishna didn't actually have to wait. He could have just with a thought, with like the snap of his fingers, in a second, even in an instant, he could have solved the whole situation. He could have dissolved all of the problems, all of the wrongdoings in the material world. So why is this? We can see a similar example in the pastimes of Lord Ram. Vishnu Chitta Prabhu recently gave an amazing seminar talking about the processes of surrender talked about in the Ramayana. And in that, it was described how even without appearing and coming to the material world, Lord Ram could have just killed Ravana even with just a thought. He didn't have to come. He didn't have to come in the family of kings and be the brother of Lakshman, Bharat, and Shatrughna. He didn't have to go and kill all of these demons in the forest. He didn't have to get married to Sita and then get exiled and go through so much effort just to find where Sita was being held captive. He could have just with a thought dissolved the whole situation. And we can see even in this case, similar to how Prabhupada is describing here, that the Lord always wants to see his devotees as the hero of some episode which he performs. He wanted to see his devotee and friend Arjuna as the hero of the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So we can see similarly in the Ramayana that even though Lord Ram was going through all these activities and going through so much endeavor, he still gave a lot of the credit to Hanuman. There was the bridge that was being made to cross the vast ocean of Lanka, and Lord Ram, he performed the great feat of making the stones float on the water and building a bridge. But Hanuman, he simply just flew across without much effort. So it isn't that Lord Ram had to build the bridge or that he couldn't have done it, but he wanted all the glory and all this to go to Hanuman. Similarly, in this battlefield of Kurukshetra, Krishna could have just in an instant dissolved the whole situation, but he wanted to give the credit to Arjuna. He wanted the glory of a great warrior, and he wanted the glories of his devotee to be spread and to be remembered in stories like the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Mahabharata. Because we can see, what is this Srimad Bhagavatam? It's not only talking about the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of the Supreme Lord, but it's also talking about the glories and the qualities of his devotees. So this is naturally what's very pleasing to the Supreme Lord, is not just when the Supreme Personality, not just when the Supreme Personality of Godhead is glorified and when he gets the credit, but when he gives the credit to others. And one other amazing instance of this is not only just Hanuman, but it's our very own Srila Prabhupada. That there was an instance in India, I believe it was, when some of Prabhupada's early disciples were talking to other members of the Gaudiya Math, and they said, if Lord Chaitanya really wanted this Sankirtan movement to be spread all over the world and to be distributed to everybody, he would have just done it himself. So, and he preached here in India, and he traveled all throughout India, North India, South India, but he didn't go all over the world. So, if he wanted to do it, he would have just done it himself. But Prabhupada said no. He said that Lord Chaitanya could have done it, but he wanted to give me the credit. He wanted to give me the credit of spreading this movement all over the world. Prabhupada writes this here in his preface to Bhagavad Gita, actually. I'll pull that up. Talking about the credit that he has been given. Prabhupada says, "If personally I have any credit in this matter, it is only that I have tried to present Bhagavad Gita as it is, without any adulteration. Before my presentation of Bhagavad Gita as it is, almost all the English editions of Bhagavad Gita were introduced to fulfill someone's personal ambition. But our attempt in presenting Bhagavad Gita as it is to present the mission of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Our business is to present the will of Krishna, not that of any mundane speculator like the politician, philosopher, scientist, because they have very little knowledge of Krishna, despite all their other knowledge." So because Prabhupada was so strictly following the orders of not only his own spiritual master, but of presenting this philosophy of Krishna consciousness as it is, he was able to be so successful. Even so many mundane scholars, speculators, even some of Srila Prabhupada's own godbrothers tried to come to the West to spread this Krishna conscious movement and try and present the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, but they didn't do it in the pure, as-it-is way that Srila Prabhupada did. And Prabhupada was talking about here, similar to as he's talking about here in the purport, that so many of these philosophers, mental speculators, they have so much knowledge. They have so many things, but yet they don't have the real knowledge with it, which is knowledge of Krishna. So just as I was reading before, Krishna talks about how he has to appear in this world to give pleasure to the devotees and to kill the demons. So we also have to, similarly like Arjuna, who acted as Krishna's instrument in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, who was engaged in killing the demoniac personalities, we also have to take up this mission and this service as acting as an instrument of Krishna here in this current Kali Yuga, here in the material world. And how is it? It isn't that we just find some people that are puffed up with false pride, people that are trying to harm the spread of this Krishna conscious movement and just go and kill them, finish them off, and be like, oh yeah, good riddance anyway, now they're gone. But what we actually have to do is we have to kill their demoniac mentality. And this is what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did in his own pastimes in spreading his Sankirtan movement. When Jagai and Madai offended Lord Nityananda by throwing a clay pot at his head, and Lord Nityananda was even bleeding, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so angry that he was about to kill Jagai and Madai right there, but Lord Nityananda Prabhu reminded him of the real purpose wasn't just to kill the demoniac people and to kill the people in this age with this demoniac mentality, but it was really to liberate all of the fallen conditioned souls, not just those who were already having some interest in Krishna consciousness, or not just the pious people, or not just those searching for higher purpose in life, but anybody and everybody. And how do we kill this demoniac mentality? It's as Srila Prabhupada describes here, is that we simply have to try to present Bhagavad Gita as it is without any adulteration. So we simply have to represent the Guru Parampara and the disciplic succession. There's this play on words that's often made, is that to represent simply means to re-present. That we aren't just trying to create something new. We aren't trying to, each and every couple years, we publish our own edition of the Bhagavad Gita because, I know so much more, and I've now made a better Bhagavad Gita than the one that Krishna spoke 5,000 years ago. But if we simply just represent the message that Krishna spoke in the Bhagavad Gita, we'll be able to free all the fallen conditioned souls of this illusion and this false pride that they're under. And we'll be able to actually get them to surrender to Krishna, because they won't know how to surrender to Krishna unless they get the books of Srila Prabhupada. Who just on the street randomly knows about Krishna? I mean, because we go to all these spiritual conventions and these events, and when people know things about the Srimad Bhagavatam or about Krishna, or even about things like Kali and Shiva, we're like, oh my God, you know about that? That's crazy. Not so many people know about these things, and we're shocked by all of these different things that go on. So many people out there, they don't even know about Krishna, let alone to surrender to him. So that's why we have to distribute these books of Srila Prabhupada and be able to free people from the sense of false pride and illusion and bring them closer to Krishna. So that's what Prabhupada is talking about here, and this is the answer to Vidura's question about why Krishna waited so long, is that he wanted to give the credit to Arjuna. So similarly, Lord Chaitanya wanted to give Srila Prabhupada the credit, and he was able to spread this mission all over the world. Prabhupada has already done all the hard work for us. He's already given us the law books for the next 10,000 years. He's already given us so many facilities. He's already taught us how to do everything. But he has left us one thing: establishing Daiva Varnashram farm communities. Prabhupada said 50% is still left. Establishing these farms, books and farms. So we can practically see in the Western world now, the farm communities that have tried to been established haven't exactly worked out. It hasn't become a process which is fully set up and that devotees can apply themselves to. But the order of Srila Prabhupada is there. Just like how Lord Chaitanya said that this Sankirtan movement will be spread to every single town and village, and we can see that Srila Prabhupada practically did that. Similarly, Prabhupada is saying that that millions will join our farms and that we must establish these farm communities means that it must be true and that it must happen. Right? With the order of the spiritual master also comes the potency to follow that instruction. So, what are we waiting for? Prabhupada left us this so we could have the credit. Of course, out of our humility, we'll say that it's due to the mercy of Prabhupada and the disciplic succession, but we can also have this idea of transcendental pride that under the mercy and the potency of our own spiritual master, that we've actually been able to establish these Daiva Varnashram farm communities and fulfill the instructions of Srila Prabhupada. So I'll end my class there. if there's any corrections, questions, or comments, I'll take those now. Alls?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
We're talking about this song, and I just wanted to look it up because I was thinking about some of the lyrics. I mean, he says like, "I am a god," but then he immediately says like, "Where's my massage? Where's my car?"
Yeah.
Like, he can't like get the things he wants, but he's like angry about it. So like, what kind of God is that? You can't even like get what you're wanting. He wants some croissants. Anyways, that's there. And then the question I had was like, so you're talking about how, Krishna was there, but so many didn't see him as, Supreme Personality of Godhead. They were envious and, they thought themselves equal to him. But it's also said that, like, the sound of Krishna's flute, like, melts rocks and, like, all the animals in Vrindavan are stunned. Of course, they're pure devotees, but, he's all attractive. His beauty is so much more than we can conceive of and all these things. So how is it that, like, someone that's so beautiful and so attractive, is all attractive, even to all living entities, how is it that they didn't find that attractive, or they were so, like, just saw him as another person?
Yeah, I mean, we can even practically see this in our own lives, right? We're seeing the deity form of Krishna every single day, who's so beautiful. And, we're reading Prabhupada's books every day, and in these books there's so many beautiful illustrations that are like windows to the spiritual world in these transcendental literatures. But yet we're still attracted to so many mundane material things. We're still so lusty, still so puffed up, still not attracted to Krishna, because if we were fully attracted to Krishna, then we'd pretty much be in the spiritual world. So we can practically see this in our own lives, that it's because we're still attracted to that lower taste, right? Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, "Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinaha rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishva nivartate." That in order to become free from the lower taste, one has to get that higher taste. So if we're still trying to enjoy these lower tastes and are still trying to, enjoy these material things, we can't actually develop that higher taste and that love for Krishna. So similarly, even though these personalities like Duryodhana and others, they were physically in the presence of Krishna, but they were so blinded by illusions, so blinded by their own material desires, that they were unable to actually see Krishna for all who he was. Versus someone like Arjuna, who was fully surrendered and who was a pure devotee, he was, like we can see in the Bhagavad Gita, that Krishna even reveals his universal form to Arjuna, and he's blown away by that, right? So Arjuna is actually able to see Krishna for who he is, versus someone like Duryodhana, who's still puffed up by this false pride and who's still under so much illusion and attached to so many material things, he's unable to see Krishna for who he is. Vishnu Chaitanya Prabhu.
There's a small correction. We don't offer credit to Guru Parampara out of humility, and it is actually a fact.
Yeah, I mean, anyway.
Now I know what you mean, but the way you said it.
It's not what I said, it's the way I said it.
It's funny, but it's also not funny. Anyways, the point is that we understand that it is the mercy of the Guru Parampara that we do all these things, but at the same time, there can be transcendental pride that we have such a wonderful Guru Parampara, we have such a wonderful lineage, we're in the association of such wonderful devotees. So it's something to feel, that we have such a wonderful master as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's so amazing in all his qualities, and something that a devotee is proud of. But at the same time, he understands that it's all the mercy of the Supreme Personality of God. But that isn't humility. That's the point. That's the fact. So it's not humility. Humility is when they're actually responsible for doing something, and they say, no, I'm not. Say, for instance, their senses are completely under their control, but they say, no, my senses, I don't have any control over my senses. And that's humility. It's like that.
What's up, bro?
Another answer to Ali's question is Bhagavad Gita 7:25. You can pull that up, whoever has it. Naham prakasha sarvasya yoga maya samavritha. Muro yam nami janati. Lokamama chamavyayam. And Krishna makes it clear here. Why even Krishna is all attractive, why can't people see him? I'm never manifested the foolish and unintelligent. For them I'm covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know me as I am. Bhagavad Gita 9:11. Avajananti mamudha. Pull that up. 9:11. Hare Krishna. Hello, good morning. Avajananti mamudha manushim tanam ashritam. Param bhavama janantam bhuta maheshwaram. So yeah, go ahead. Yeah, there you go. Fools ride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature, the supreme Lord of all that be. So yeah, they don't have a desire to see. That's all.
Thank you. Ramdas Abhiram Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Renunciation, is this something that you can see?
Yeah, just look at our spiritual master.
Okay.
Mataji's, any questions? Nozzle.
One other order, at least that I can think of off the top of my head, is to have a Bhagavatam and a CC in every home.
That's true.
And
A full set of all of Prabhupada's books in every home.
everyone but me is doing that, so I'm doing the farms. Also, one thing is this verse was interesting because this is the mentality people get when they don't understand the concept of reincarnation and karma. When they see bad people experiencing good things in this world, they're waiting for them to get their karma or get what they deserve. Sometimes people lose faith eventually in God because they think, okay, God's not handling business. He's not giving them what they deserve kind of thing. But, as devotees, we understand, maybe not in this life, but we shouldn't retaliate. Whatever's due to them may happen in this life or the next life or whatever, so we don't get so envious of those kind of things.
Yeah. Thank you for that point. Taresh.
This is crazy. I have a question, right, about you were mentioning how I had a question about how you were mentioning how you and other devotees here when they distribute books, they're really fired up when other people read the books. So I'm wondering where does that exactly come from? Does that come from because Prabhupada was pleased when other people read the books, and then your spirit, Guru Maharaj also pleased from reading the books? Does that come from their does that come from just where does that come from? I'm asking why are you so damn happy that they read the books,
Wow, that's powerful. Yeah, I'm in the association of such great devotees like Mahotsa Prabhu, Matsya Prabhu, Micharan Prabhu, and Adi Krishna Prabhu, Abhimanyu Sutta Prabhu, Vishnu Chitta Prabhu,
and Ram.
So,
Well, and Mason.
so, I'm.
I don't know. I just heard
Where does it get his happiness?
Why do we get happy?
you said the disciples are manifestations of the Guru's ecstasy.
I'm sorry, of what?
Explain it.
Do you understand the question?
You gotta explain
The Bhagavatam.
No, I don't.
Not
I don't
really
know.
so much.
I just heard the last part. That's what I thought.
What's the question?
My
It's
question is
Is it where our enthusiasm to distribute books comes from?
no, okay, so again, it may not make sense, but the question is how it says your desire becomes one with the spiritual master, right? So when they're happy that other people are reading the book, is that the same as you or you getting happy when other people read the books?
Well, I mean, we're happy to fulfill the orders of our spiritual master. You know, it's just like what it is. All right, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai.
What was that, bro?